Deja vu for Port Adelaide at the MCG on a Saturday afternoon once again. Got absolutely smashed in a contested possession battle, forward half territory game, belong in Collingwood's forward half, and Collingwood end up winning by 5 goals despite being down by 5 goals early in the game. What's a Collingwood win without a comeback in one sense or another? So without further ado, let's just get straight into the footage, and we'll assess the game and review it as we go through each snippet that I've put together. Early on in the resurgence of this game, Collingwood managed to get some centre bounce ascendancy thanks to some great ruck work by Darcy Cameron and identifying a mismatch between Willem Drew and Jordan De Goey in this case. Jordan De Goey is a difficult matchup at the best of times, a good hybrid between speed and power, probably a little bit too fast, and probably a similar regard when it comes to power when coming up against someone like Willem Drew. So we can see here Collingwood's midfield has vacated this section for Darcy Cameron to tap into. As we'll see, Jordan De Goey will have a running strip here to get on his bike and get a quality look going inside 50. So De Goey finds a little bit of body, gets on his bike, and a great look going inside 50 to Bo McCreary. Shortly after that, it was more or less the same. It's obviously now it's no longer this section here as it's being occupied by, I think that's Nick Dacos, sorry. In this case, the space resides here, and we'll see Darcy Cameron get some good tap work as well. De Goey uses his power. The previous play was De Goey's speed. Gets the ball on the outside. And while it didn't really eventuate into anything, it was just more of a point to prove that De Goey was able to see some wins in the midfield through speed, through power, and great ruck work. Now, in this case, I want us to keep an eye on two features within this play. Firstly, let's look at Bobby Hill in between Burgoyne and Lachie Jones, and then some more work from Darcy Cameron in the ruck that was really pleasing to see. And what I liked about Darcy Cameron in this case, at this very moment, you can see Soldo is attempting to go up for his aerial contest now to get a tap into his midfield. But what Darcy Cameron does, he bumps him at the perfect time when he is off balance, and pretty much forces an uncontested claim from that ruck battle because Darcy Cameron was able to time that nudge so well. Very smart, obviously, Soldo being on 1 foot at that point. That is usually the best time to lay a bump in the ruck contest. So Cameron gets it forward, and then here we go. Now it's Bobby Hill's time to get on his bike and outwork Burgoyne, who was goal side of him, and then Lachie Jones here, I believe. So Myercheck wins that contest. Look at Bobby Hill still steamrolling, and he works just hard enough to get an overlap and puts Lachie Jones in a situation he'd rather not be in, and we get a set shot from that instance. This one I'm going to leave for the comment section for the viewers. I want to get your thoughts on this one here. So Nick Dacos charges into the contest late to equalise the stoppage here, the stoppage numbers. And then we got Tom Mitchell, who is a direct matchup for Horne-Francis in this case. So I'll pause it again for you here. So we've got Nick Dacos, he's here, and then Mitchell's here, and then obviously Francis is there. What would you like to see transpire in this case? Because I tell you what, Horne-Francis gets this and kicks the goal. I don't think there's an absolute right or wrong. I think there's many things that maybe Collingwood could have done different to avoid that situation. But I want to extend that conversation into the comment section, and then we can go from there. So have a crack. So this is when we started to see the game really shift momentum-wise. Collingwood had managed to hold the ball in our forward half for 4 minutes without a goal, but at the very least exhausting the Port Adelaide defensive engine room. Now, what I really like about this play is Aaliyah, who is on Lachie Schultz right now, was completely free in the play that preceded this moment and was able to have an intercept impact in the play. Lachie Schultz says, not this time, I'm going to put bodywork on you very early to avoid you having an impact where this ball is likely to fall in this space here. So here, Lachie Schultz already putting work onto Aaliyah. And still putting work. And by the time Aaliyah gets free, we got Hoskin Elliott taking the mark of the day, essentially, and beginning that comeback for the Pies. So take it as you will, maybe Ilya should have fought over that block that Schultz was putting on a little bit harder. I mean, there's a clear weight difference, so I'm sure if Ilya tried a little bit harder, he could have had more of an impact in that play. Segueing from that moment to this, it's another similar case. We're going to see Myercheck. He's looking for the swap here, so he wants to go on Ilya so that Mason Cox can have an even bigger mismatch on Lachie Jones. And what was disappointing for Port, and I'm sure they'll talk about this, is Alia's just willingness to allow this swap to happen. Doesn't really fight it. He's sort of like hugging Myercheck, and then Mason Cox takes Lachie Jones away from Alia so that he has less of an opportunity to have an impact. At this point, Alia is too far away, as we can see here. He's not only a couple moments away from the contest, he's also behind Myercheck, who will be putting on a block for Mason Cox if Alia was to ever have an impact in this contest. As you can see, Mason Cox takes that mark pretty much. Look, it is a nice mark over Zerk Thatcher, but Lachie Jones had no impact in that case at all. We've got 2 minutes left in the second quarter. The scores are level after a massive comeback from Collingwood. And you want to know why Collingwood won the game? It's because of this. Collingwood just wanted it more. The goalie all over Drew, has two players stumbling over. Dacos, strong tackle. Nick Dacos on the ball. And that's the difference. This is the ultimate difference in the game. Willpower, just ferocious attack on the ball. Houston a little bit slower than Lipinski reading where that ball's going to go. And that's what happens. We'll see from this angle, Houston probably needs to be a little bit more aware that Lipinski is looking to get out the back in this case. So that just in this moment right here, you can see Lipinski's identified. He's going to start getting on his bike, whereas Houston's sort of flat-footed, just ball watching in a sense. He's not really front and center, which he could be here to have more of an impact potentially, but he's sort of just caught in two minds and a little bit slow to the play. It's a slight millisecond, good block by Myercheck as well, but it's a slight millisecond where Houston could be a little bit sharper and maybe has more of an impact on Lipinski's shot on goal. Right now, we're going to see Darcy Cameron split the difference in a 2-on-1 contest, bring the ball to ground. Rosie's sloppy, Nick Dacos isn't. And then from this moment, it's a check side kick. And just as the ball's about to bounce, Bobby knows what how a check side kick bounce usually will come up at the player, in this case here with Hoskin Elliott. Bobby Hill makes that gamble and gets on his bike, tries to create some space and give Hoskin Elliott an option over the top. And it's a low-risk situation where forward here, Asava decides to attack the ball, and then we'll see what happens here. The ball bounces up perfectly, which is what I imagine Bobby Hill was hoping for from that check side kick from Nick Dacos. We get over the top. Sava doesn't have an impact at all at the ball on Bobby Hill. I think this is Lachie Jones, not strong enough below his knees. Bobby Hill clean. Schultz finishes the good work created by Darcy Cameron initially at that contest, and then Bobby Hill just being a little bit smarter and a little bit quicker reading how that ball may bounce. In this case, Port Adelaide reluctantly have to go long here against Collingwood. And just keep an eye on Nick Dacos here and Jason Horne-Francis and watch where they choose to position themselves in this case or in this moment of the game. I'll pause it right about here. So Horne-Francis elects to run past where the contest ends up being, whereas Nick Dacos sticks to the foundations of the game, stays front and center, and does the right things, okay? So we're out here, we get the ball on the outside. Fair enough, Jason Horne-Francis makes the initial mistake to try cheat and get out the back. Now it's his time to show his two-way running and maybe put some pressure on Nick Dacos, his direct play in that case. And we'll see Nick Dacos on the outside. Horne-Francis not really putting a name on a player that he wants to mark. He's sort of just getting back for the sake of it. I think we've already got one player here, two players here already occupying the space where Horne-Francis is hoping to go. And even furthermore, Aaliyah has got good coverage here. He's keeping his defender boundary side. So Horne-Francis, maybe he can end up or should be firstly focusing on his direct play from that initial contest being Nick Dacos. And then here we get a really good overhead mark from Lachie Schultz. Something maybe Collingwood players weren't familiar with, being a Fremantle player last season. But yeah, really shares some great similarities that Jamie Elliott possesses in his game as a medium-sized forward. Let's get some Tom Mitchell appreciation going here for this moment where he goes back to the flight Obviously, no repercussions, fortunately. It was largely an uncontested mark, but he was outstanding and has been outstanding for the last 3 or 4 weeks. He had 10 tackles this game, was top 3 for pressure acts, had a myriad of contested possessions, and just won the ball in tight within those contests and really sticks to the linchpin of his game, being contested ball work, of course. So just wanted to give him a shout out. I had him dead and gone after the game against St Kilda. I thought he looked too slow, but when the Collingwood brand is at the forefront of what we're trying to put out on a weekly basis and when it's working really well, Mitchell does prove to be a key cog in that system. Obviously, when we isolate moments where things aren't going well, it's easier to point fingers at Tom Mitchell. But when things are going well and we're defensively sound, our structure is good, and we're not turning over the ball at will, Tom Mitchell fits into that system very well. Whereas if we're playing a game where we're just not playing the way Collingwood should be playing, he looks vulnerable, sure, but most players will look vulnerable running back the other way in an open contest when you're not winning the ball inside tight and turning over the ball too easily. This next snippet just shows you how simple footy can be, even at an AFL level. Put in effort, run hard, know where to run, and more often than not, you'll be paid in full for what you put in is usually what you get out of the game. Dacos here puts a tackle to Leah, a scrappy kick going outside of their defensive 50. Josh Dacos was on the floor after that, just mind you, okay? So watch this as this segment goes along. Josh Dacos here is busting his guts after laying that tackle in his forward 50 on Leah, and beelines this ball while his direct opponent, being Bergman, who wasn't involved in that initial contest, is still sort of dawdling along. Josh Dacos hits this contest at speed, wins it. Good hands under pressure, while Bergman is sort of just chasing tails, not really having an impact. 15 seconds after that inspiring effort from Josh Dacos, we see De Goey chasing Zach Butters, one of the fastest players on the field, zigging and zagging. At this point, De Goey gets beaten in speed, but is able to then pass on the baton to Myercheck to then apply some more pressure. And Myercheck does enough. We get the forward half intercept. Quaynor goes inside 50, and we reap the rewards here. I think this ball comes to ground and we get a shot on target. Not to be, but still, we don't get that shot on target without that amazing work rate from De Goey and Myercheck. De Goey was outstanding all game long. He's been outstanding last few weeks, and the biggest difference for me when I'm watching De Goey play is just his effort. And it goes for a lot of the players in the team, just willing to work both ways. And we're just that much better of a team when we are running hard and applying pressure. This one here was a really nice end-to-end transition, working with the hands, a bit unconventional in the defensive half from a kick-in. Keep an eye on Darcy Byrne-Jones. He does work hard in this case, but I don't think he's keeping a close enough eye on Nick Dacos, who is always going to be the man who sort of is the anchor point in this situation and looks to bring the ball out through Nick Dacos in the build-up. So Byrne-Jones onto Nick Dacos, sort of just lets him go on the inside, and now he's off pretty much. The work has been done. Good contest provided by Elliott. Feeds it to Pendles, and Myercheck, I think, takes his mark. Another scoring shot for Collingwood. Collingwood at this point are 23 points up. There's 7 minutes, 24 seconds left to go. So still enough time for Port Adelaide to come back. And in cases where Butters has been able to run free and waltz out of the middle against teams like Essendon, someone named Beau McCreary doesn't allow that to happen this time round. Literally 45 seconds after that, Butters has an opportunity to break out of this contest here and duck and weave. McCreary again applying a pressure. Gets absolutely poleaxed here by Josh Dacos, and we get a shot on goal with Nick Dacos. Another question that I have for you guys in the comment section is, what would you like Nick Dacos to do in this case? We've just applied great pressure in the stoppage. We forced a turnover off a great player in Zach Butters. Do we want Nick Dacos to give this, or give this, because we know he can do this one. He can use his left hand for the hand pass or even do a left foot snap. Or do we want him lowering the eyes and feeding it into Reef McInnes' space here, as there's plenty of space in this hole for McInnes to run into? Or are you happy to live with this shot that Nick Dacos takes from just inside 50? Let me know. I've noticed he's done it a couple times and it's worked out. Sometimes it hasn't. But in a finals-like intensity game, what do we want in this moment from a team standpoint? You let me know. Some great pressure from our zone. Ollie Wines sort of plays into this situation in Collingwood's hand here, but nevertheless, it was great heads-up work from Isaac Quaynor in this case. So he's here. Ollie Wines on the ball. He probably needs to kick this one short into Francis here. Instead, he plays into Collingwood's hands, and Quaynor is aware and ready to pounce on that. Applies the turnover, and Collingwood swarm, and they're out. McCreary gives it to a runner, and another runner in Nick Dacos. Hoskin Elliott, I think he centres this to Mason Cox, and it's a great mark. And Lockie Schultz to Bobby Hill for another goal assist. Bobby Hill, 4 goal assists for that game. He averaged just 0.6 last year, and I said in the preseason from what I was looking at, watching him train, watching him play his inter-clubs and practice matches, he's got capacity to average over a goal assist a game, which would be elite for a small to medium-sized forward like Bobby Hill. He's currently averaging 1.2, and I think he's got a little bit more room to grow. So I'm really excited to see where that goes as the season progresses. I just want to show a junk time moment. There's 2.5 minutes left in the last quarter. Who wants to run this game out, and who's putting the cue in the rack? And I tell you what, it's Port Adelaide who put the cue in the rack. So here we see Ryan Burton makes a contest on this aerial challenge with Hoskin Elliott, and then there's Kane Farrell and Bobby Hill. So there's 4 players I want you to keep in mind in this case. Burton doesn't win this. Hoskin Elliott's first to it, and Burton's sort of already behind because of the misplay. They didn't have an opportunity to impact. Kane Farrell applies pressure on Hoskin Elliott. And then we see here, I want you to keep an eye on Bobby Hill and Ryan Burton. You can see Bobby Hill just wants it more than Burton. If Burton really wanted to, he could have had more of an impact. So here, you can see Bobby Hill is in full flight, whereas Burton's sort of just like at a jogging pace, and he continues in that trend. Still jogging. Bobby Hill gets the ball, and another goal assist for Bobby Hill. Call it hypercritical, but this is what matters at the top echelons of AFL footy. Ryan Burton wasn't willing to run out the game. Bobby Hill was, and we end up winning by more than 5 goals in the end, despite being down by 30-odd points in the first quarter. As most of the good teams are doing this year, like Port Adelaide, GWS, Sydney, Collingwood were able to score 22 points from the centre bounce clearances, which is really important as a feature in your game. We had 22 forward 50 ground ball gets, and I mentioned that in my preview that Port Adelaide in their defensive 50 struggled below their knees, and Collingwood capitalised that in a big way. And ultimately, footy is just a really simple game. Win the contest, we're plus 40, similar to our corresponding game last year at the G against Port Adelaide, where we were plus 15 contested possessions. You don't win games as an opposition if you are minus 40 or minus 50 in the contest. And from there, Collingwood were just able to set up in our forward half. Winning the contest in the stoppages, winning the contest in the centre bounce clearances gives you a chance to set up defensively, and then we look that much better. Darcy will look so much better when we're more defensively structured. We're able to set up behind the ball. Whereas if the ball's pinged from end to end, I think it plays against Collingwood, and we're not very good in that transition. And not many teams are great in that transition. You're going to get exposed as a team defensively if the ball's pinging from end to end. Whereas if you're able to set up in your forward half and be defensively sound, you're going to look much better. Pressure is king, and build your game from there. Go Pies.